Recording, and away we go. We're now recording. Great. So, welcome everyone. As I said, welcome to our friends joining us for the first time from Clique. I believe we have Matt lurking somewhere. Where are you? On page 2 or page 3? Ah, good. There you are. Excellent. Thanks very much for getting us involved. Very nice to have you here. Also, we have Margaret Grieg joining us as a present from Alan. So welcome, Margaret. Very nice to have you with us as well. I hope you enjoy this session. I was just about to go on and say what an exciting wine lineup we have. And of course we have an exciting wine lineup because we're Honest Grapes. But, you know, when Charlie and I and the rest of the team were working on what wines to do for our 6th birthday sessions, you know, we came up with these, you know, a fair while ago now. And I was only revisiting them this morning and looking at what we're going to be tasting this evening. And I have to say, you're in for a real treat. These are fantastic wines, and whereas the previous session that we did 2 weeks ago, for those of you who were with us for that, it was, you know, kind of Honest Grapes classics, we called it. It was wines which have been on our books almost in some cases for the duration of the business, our 6 years, our sixth birthday this month. So they're kind of part of the fabric, part of the framework. These are all wines which I think, having a quick look through the lineup, I mean, I don't think there's a single wine here which has been on the list prior to 2020. So these are all, you know, and probably, yeah, within the last 6 months in the main. So these are all discoveries for us, and hopefully discoveries for you. And I think that's one of the incredibly important things about wine, is that you don't get stuck in a rut. It's very easy to you know, the thing I hear more than anything from people about wine is, well, I don't know much about wine, but I know what I like. And that's great. That's a starting point, but it should remain nothing more than a starting point. You know, you should use your initial taste, your initial interest as the springboard to learn more. And frankly, you know, I think we all need a bit of entertainment. Sadly, more and more we're having to do this at home, especially with the new government restrictions, and we're delighted to provide those opportunities. So, bit of entertainment, bit of education. We all love learning about something that we enjoy. You know, learning more about wine adds the grammar to the appreciation. And so I think tonight, you know, we've got a really exciting lineup of new wines to us, new wines to you, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Now, we've got 6 wines to get through. I'm going to try and keep this as close to possible to an hour 15. As ever, I'm sure we'll run on, and I'm not going anywhere. So I'm happy to stay on for those who want to continue to ask questions and chat. You're all so used to this, or maybe in fact we muted you anyway on entry. Charlie set this up, but you know, if you've got any questions or comments you want to ask as we go, please do. If you think it's probably a slightly longer question, then you might want to save it to the end, so that we don't disrupt the flow too much. Please do use the chat function. We love the chat function. I'll certainly try and weave in to everything I'm saying, you know, the questions that are asked along the way, if they're easy to do so. So now, first and foremost, does everyone have the Mas Comtal in their glass? Or if not, please pour it now, get tasting. I've broken a cardinal rule of mine, which is to talk when there are empty glasses. So I apologize for that. That's not something I normally do. Obviously, it's been 2 weeks since my last tasting, so I'm a bit out of practice, clearly. Good. So, our first wine. Our first wine is the Mas Comtal Xarel, and wow, I mean, you know, where to start? We're in Penedès. So we're in Penedès in southern Spain. Catalonia. It's probably the nearest wine region to Barcelona. Well, certainly the nearest one that you'd probably bother going to see. And, you know, Penedès is really best known, rightly or wrongly, for its cava. You know, it's the center of cava production. And Xarel, this grape, is one of the three, it's one of the three indigenous grape varieties in cava. It's not the most important. And in fact, many of the vineyards have been dug up in order to plant the other grapes, which are Macabeo and Pinzellada. You don't have to make cava with indigenous grapes. You can make it with Chardonnay. Freixenet, for example, Freixenet makes cava with Chardonnay. But to be honest, I don't want to dwell too much on Freixenet and cava. You know, they are what they are. They're there. You know, they're out there to be bought and drunk by those who want to buy and drink them. Let's leave it at that. But you know, the fascinating thing about Mas Comtal is that, you know, they really have gone against the grain of, you know, traditional regional production. So, you know, they have 40 hectares of vines. They've been organic. They've been in organic conversion for a long time, you know, really since they started, you know, ringing in the changes in the 80s and 90s, and fully organic for 20, 30 years now. They're a member of an association called Qualidades, which is, as the name suggests, a combination of the word qualidad, quality, and Penedès. So it's quality wines from Penedès. But the key thing is it's about regional typicity and sustainability. In fact, there's a bit of a theme running through these wines this evening, which is no surprise because, you know, Honest Grapes, we pride ourselves on working with, you know, sustainable producers, but pretty much all of them are organic, some's biodynamic, all practice very sustainable viticulture. And these guys are a great starting point for that. And the reason we can get excited about this wine is because it really is pretty dynamic and exciting, different. You know, Xarel, a minor grape in the tripartite blend of the traditional wines in cava. It's and you can tell immediately, sticking your nose in this and then tasting it, you know, this is the grape which gives the flavor to cava. It gives the aromatic complexity, the richness. It's really pretty, it's pretty full, you know, it's pretty full. You've got this sort of kind of rich, almost kind of waxy cheese rind nose, sort of that beeswax character, canvas. Oh, I'm just going to let Luke in. Hang on. Oops, hang on. I nearly muted him. Oh, someone else is. Thanks, Charlie. That palate, lovely richness. Good sort of white stone, very ripe peach, apricot-y fruit, but a nice lick of salt on the finish. Now I think, wow, 12.5%. I just out of interest, quick show of hands, who's surprised by the alcohol level? Who thought it was more than that? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay, a few. Okay, who of you are terribly clever and thought that it wasn't? Okay, good, excellent. Well done for being honest. No, I mean, honestly, that for me is a great example of a wine which has a lot of intensity without density. I'm going to pour myself a little more, otherwise Teresa will come in and steal it. So yeah. So the Mila family, who run the estate, they basically have their roots here in Penedès, really within the very specific region in which they are, since the 15th century. It's two brothers who rang in the changes and started grubbing up some of the Pinzellada and Macabeo and planting more Xarel. You know, they've got 50 to 80-year-old vines here, so a lot of old vine complexity, which I think you're kind of getting in the extra the sort of the value add aromas and flavors here. You're getting plenty of texture, plenty of development, plenty of character, frankly. Um, mm. Johann and Albert really rang in the changes in the 80s and 90s. And now it's Marta Mila. Hang on, just letting in someone else who's taken over. Who I must admit, I don't know, so apologies. I think she is the daughter of one or other of the brothers, basically, but she's now running the show. They only make less than 3,000 bottles of this particular wine, but it's a real statement wine for them. They want to show that Penedès can make wines of great complexity, of impressive texture, of richness, which aren't just cheap carver. And I think they achieved this in spades with this particular wine. They also, and we listed as well, they do a fantastic Cabernet Franc as well. And some of the reds from Penedès really go under the radar. They really do. You don't see them that often, but they are well worth checking out. So I do recommend their Cabernet Franc very, very highly. I like that. It's really opening up. I've only used up sort of a little more than half of my 100 mils. I have to save some for Teresa, so I won't drink any more. But if you're not going to finish it all now, then this will open up quite interesting. I think even in the time since I've been talking, this second glass is showing more and more sort of secondary character, more of that kind of cheese rind, wax, beeswax, manuka honey. I like this wine. It's definitely a food wine in the sense that you could quite comfortably pair this up with some pretty substantial dishes. And I think, although this is 2018, it's relatively youthful. For me, it's got some quite evolved character. So I think I would enjoy this now, probably over the next 4 or 5 years. Well, technically 4 or 5 minutes, really, with this glass. So, any comments or questions about this wine before we move on? I know we've got 6 to get through, so I'm charging through at quite a pace. Just checking, and I'm just checking on the chat here. Bum, bum, bum. By the way, apologies. It is the 2017 Xarel. I don't know why it says 18 on the tasting sheet. Blame and sack Charlie is my suggestion. I just work here. I just turn up and open these things and taste them, pretend I know what I'm talking about. So, it's his fault. Okay, so let's do the Henchkey Riesling, which, again, just checking, this is 2017, the Henchkey Julius Riesling. Does anyone have anything else? Does anyone have, I don't know, 2002 Bâtard Montrachet Grand Cru? If you do, you're very lucky, but you've signed up for the wrong session, or you've opened the wrong ones. Oh, hang on, just letting in Ben here. Okay. Okay. Right. Just letting this open up a little bit in the glass. Gosh, this is a great nose. One of the great discoveries in the Venus journey of any wine lover needs to be New World Riesling, really quite specifically sort of Southern Australian Riesling, because it's quite esoteric. It's actually very drinkable. If you don't like Riesling, you could like this. If you like Riesling, you will like this. is a good way of putting it. It's also a bit of a darling of sommeliers and critics and connoisseurs, because it's slightly unusual. It's always very distinctive. It's very characterful, and frankly, it's never very commercial. You don't make Riesling full stop, but certainly not in the New World unless you've got a real passion to do so. This is not like making Chardonnay in Australia. This is not necessarily commercially hugely viable wine. You do it for the love of it. You do it because you love the grape. You love the opportunity that the terroir offers, and hopefully you love the wine that it produced. So we're here in the Eden Valley, down here just north of Adelaide, and the Eden Valley actually makes up more or less half of the Barossa Valley in its entirety. So when you talk about the Barossa Valley, you're really talking about Barossa and the Eden Valley. It's just that we tend to know the Barossa Valley a bit better. Probably because it's been synonymous with the great Shirazes of our acquaintance, and that's great. Eden Valley makes, despite being one half of the Barossa Valley, is markedly different in some key respects. In that it's higher. The vineyards tend to be at a higher altitude. In this instance, we're about 460 up, so you're getting some reasonable height here. You've also got more elevation as well. So you're getting great sun impact. You're getting diurnal temperature difference, cold nights, hot days. It tends to be the place where you do get these cooler climate varieties, a little more Pinot Noir up here, for example, and certainly, of course, Riesling, which works really rather well. You also tend to get slightly lower alcohol levels and this kind of concentration of fruit as well. So, sticking my nose in here, I'm definitely getting some of that kind of Riesling lychee notes. I want to say petrol, but that's just not true. It's just not petrol-y, not yet. Probably will turn that way, but you're getting some kind of slight, kind of fume smokiness. Almost a touch of, getting like a touch of kind of green gauge as well. Maybe that's just because we're in the season of plums right now, and it's like a green gauge plum skin, yellow plum, those sort of notes. Dying to have a sip, so excuse me. Oh, that's lovely. That's really nice. It's yeah. I mean, I think after the richness and the weight of the Châtelot, this is rather more precise. I'm just looking at the chat here. Graham saying a bit sharp taste to the Riesling, not as drinkable as the Châtelot. Graham, I think that's an entirely fair point. I think the Châtelot is a lot more kind of open. It's more gentle. This is definitely more precise. It's sharper. The key thing here, it's got that classic, sort of razor laser acidity that you expect with good Riesling. So it's definitely crisper and fresher. You're right. We could do with about another 4 or 5 or 6, or frankly, 10 degrees more temperature and even colder wine. But we can't have everything. So fascinating producer, Henchkey. Johann Christian Henchkey. Oh, just gonna let Luke keeps trying to get in here. Johann Christian Henchkey sailed from Silesia in the mid 1800s. They made the first wines in 1860, and in 1891, the family purchased the Hill of Grace vineyard on Parrot Hill, and this is in the Eden Valley, and they made their first vintage of that in 1958. But, you know, if you know anything about Australian wine, or even if you don't, you will do now, you know, Hill of Grace is up there with Penfolds Grange. You know, these are the two greatest and longest sort of standing amazing Australian wines ever. So, you know, Henchkey is absolutely one of the, well, I mean, it's up there in the top handful of producers in Australia. The great thing is, you know, they've been organic, and now I think the whole production is biodynamic. Certainly the Julius is biodynamic. You know, it's a testament to sort of modern Australian winemaking, that you can get this incredible intensity, depth of flavor, but real freshness, great acidity, low acidity, low alcohol rather, biodynamic grapes, you know, the kind of sort of winemaking that we really love from wherever it comes in the world. It's named after Julius Henschke, who was sort of, I think, a great grandfather of the current generation, who was quite a famous artist, and unfortunately, his wife, when he died, she was a member of the sort of prohibition, a temperance movement, and sort of grubbed up the grapes and got rid of the vineyards. And thank God, when she died, or probably before she died, the next generation sort of replanted and carried on the legacy. So this is named after great grandfather Julius Henschke. Trina saying, it's a wine I want to savor and drink slowly. Yeah, me too, but we've got 4 more to do in, you know, about 45 minutes. So yeah, save it for later. No, it really is worth it. I think, you know, too often we don't necessarily give white wines the respect they deserve in terms of how we treat them. You know, it's sort of open pour, consume, and yet it's not just great Burgundies which can benefit from evolution in the glass. I'm sure this will continue to develop very nicely over the course of the evening. And Trina, of course, you always know where you can come if you want to buy a bottle to savor for longer. So yeah, we certainly have some left on the website. Okay, just going to have one last sip before we move on. One more thing to mention before we do. I told you how the Xarel from Mascomtal was 50 to 80-year-old vines. These are 60 to 70-year-old vines as well from the Julius, and it becomes something of a treat, you know, kind of wheedling out these old vine wines, because there's no denying that the you know, wines made from fruits where the roots have penetrated ever more deeply beneath the subsoil and into the varying bedrock of the vineyards, they do have a very particular character. You tend to find they are not so fruity necessarily. They're not so fruity, but they tend to pick up more. So we're just seeing David and Wendy are mentioning, do they get poor production with such? No, these grapes are still pretty productive. You know, you're still getting more than half a dozen bunches per vine. It's a good point though, because you know there comes a point at which the vigor and vitality of a vine, it starts to become economically not just inefficient but ruinous to keep trying to make wines from vines which have, you know, 1 or 2 bunches, and even within that the fruit can become quite woody. But this is very variety specific, and famously some of the oldest vines in the world are in Australia, are in Barossa and the Hunter Valley, and they're Grenache, old vine Grenache planted in the 1800s that survived phylloxera, or rather were never touched by phylloxera, are still productive. Cabernet and Merlot, as a rule of thumb, after about 50 or 60 years, with a few exceptions, they start to become too unproductive to be worth consideration. But Grenache, Garnacha, Canonal, as it's known, various synonyms, these vines can age for 100, 150 years and still provide enough fruit, and enough fruity fruit, fresh, vibrant, good sweetness, not just lots of leather and tar and licorice and tobacco, that they can remain productive. Okay, well, I think we'll move on to our first red of the evening. So if people want to pour themselves that. I'm going to have a quick sip of water whilst we're doing it. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat as well. Okay. Here you go, chat. Come over here. Now I can see what's going on. That's better. Well, interesting, Luke. Interesting, Luke, that you're talking about you loving the limes and flowers of this Riesling. Luke's just come back from 3 or 4 days in Germany, drinking nothing but Riesling. So it must be nice for you to come home and drink a proper Riesling the way it's meant to be done.
That's extremely controversial, Tom. Not like you at all. No, it's delicious as well. Obviously, tasted some really great stuff in Germany, particularly with Clemens and the gang. But this is awesome. The first time I've tried it, actually, we've been meaning to buy a bottle for weeks and been saving it. I've ended up with a whole bottle instead of the tasting samples. But yeah, it's lovely. It's super refreshing, and I'm sweating buckets, so it's perfect.
Lucky you. Just to avoid any confusion, because I know we sometimes can be a little taken for granted, exactly what wine we're going to be doing next. Good. I think there's a few people who are even asking this. We are now moving on to the Cellar Alimara Pinzellada Negre. So the Cellar Alimara Pinzellada Negre. Okay. And that should be on your tasting sheet that Charlie sent through. Julia, I see you've mentioned the PerSe 16. Apologies, you might have received an earlier version of the tasting sheet. But if you did, apologies. No, we want to be doing the Pinzellada next. So just checking. We don't have a list. Charlie, could you just send through, just so we're absolutely clear, because Rosemary's mentioned it, Julia was talking about the PerSe. Could you just put through on chat the list of the tasting order that we're going to do these wines? Sometimes, by the way, and again, I do apologize for this, but at the same time, I pull back from an apology. Sometimes we'll decide a tasting order, but then we'll taste the wines nearer to the time of tasting and think, actually, we should change that around because this wine's evolved more, or this wine's more powerful, or this wine is more complex. It is a bit of a movable feast, but I do apologize for any confusion there. So anyway, hopefully now everyone has our Pinzellada Negre. And we are back in Spain. We're back down in southern Spain. We're here in Terra Alta, so in Tarragona. And this is a really sort of off the beaten track region. It's sort of tacked onto the end of more famous Priorat and Montsant. And this, in fact, has the grapes that we associate with those two regions. So Garnacha or Grenache and Carignan or Carignano. No, sorry, Carignana. Carignano is what they call it in Italy. And it's about 3/4 Carignana and 1/4 Garnacha. And I want everyone just to spend a bit of time opening the wine up in the glass, chucking your nose in, because it's really quite an aromatically complex and interesting nose for, you know, a relatively modest wine. You know, I mean, this is £13.50. So, you know, for honest grapes, this is, you know, this is one of the more modestly priced wines that we have. But I think you've got really quite a powerful, quite impressive, quite intense nose. Mm. Yeah, and wow, you know, there's no shortage of impact on the palate. It really does, you know, explode with these sort of berries and cherries. At the same time, what I really love about this is the energy behind that fruit. This doesn't sit heavily on the palate at all. You know, there's great acidity, nice kind of chalky but soft tannins at the same time. Again, it's another one of those intensity, not density wines. Far milder than it smells. So interestingly, I would say, but so Julia is saying that's quite a hit. Julia, do you mean that's quite a hit as in you really like it, or wow, that just basically hits you in the face? If you're saying the latter, then potentially you and Heather are slightly at odds in terms of what you believe. Yes. Okay. Good. So Heather, for you, it's actually not quite as impactful on the palate as it is on the nose. Whereas for Julia, wow, that does strike you. Yeah. What I like is, to be honest, that, and I'm sorry, I keep saying it, but I'll keep saying it so long as it applies. It is that intensity, not density. I do think it does have quite an impact, but it doesn't sit heavily on the back palate. It's got nice freshness at the same time. So we're 400 meters up, chalky clay soils. The region was originally, grapes were planted by the Romans. Then there were several Knights Templar strongholds, which sort of continued the viticultural tradition here. It's a hot climate. There's no denying it. I've actually kind of driven up around this area in the past, and it's damn hot. But you've got the moderating influences of two winds. The Cierzo. God, my Spanish pronunciation is terrible. So if anyone wants to put the down there how I should how pronounce it properly, that would be fine. So the Cierzo, which kind of blows up from the interior, which is pretty hot but dry, and the Garbi coming from the Mediterranean, which is a bit more humid and brings a bit more kind of moisture through the air. And these two winds, we like winds, frankly, in wine regions, because they at once cool the vines, prevent the spread of rot and disease, but also in the case of the Garbi, provide perhaps a touch more moisture in those warmer months. Now, the estate, Cella Alimara. Alimara means beacon, and it refers to the beacons that were placed on the mountaintops to warn of invaders. It's a wonderful family affair. It's Andy and Ali MacLeod, husband and wife, and they've been joined by their son Rob and his partner Elena. And they're a British family, and they're out there doing really impressive things. I think making lovely, approachable, affordable, drinkable wines. I mean, very digestible wines. These are really, really rather charming. And I'm trying to remember the it was Pinzellada. Pinzellada means it's like flourish, I think. I'm looking at my notes, such as they are. I never really make very good ones, but apologies. But yeah, so Pinzellada, it was like a swirl. It means a flourish, an artist sort of swirl or flourish. Brushstroke. Look at the label. I've only got. I'm looking at the label. That doesn't say much. That says honest grapes. But yeah, Pinzellada, it's a brushstroke. There you go. It's a flourish, a swirl, a brushstroke from an artist. Yeah. Helen. Oh, sorry, that was a private thing. But anyway, I'm happy to admit it out loud. Helen, please do assist me with the Spanish pronunciation. If you want to unmute yourself, honestly, you're educating us all, and I'm easily as open to education as anyone on this thing. So please, I won't be embarrassed. Just literally unmute yourself and say this is how you pronounce it. That's fine. We're all better off.
Was it you wanted, Tom? Was it the whole thing?
The whole thing. I think it was specifically the wind, which is spelt Cierzo. How would you pronounce that?
Cierto.
There you go. Yeah, I'm not even going to try it. Cierto. Okay, there you go.
Cierto. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Helen. We'll I might come back. No, we don't have any more Spanish wines after this one, but I'll definitely come back to you in the future. Should have come back to you at the start as well with the Xarel, but yeah.
Anytime.
So just looking at a few of the comments, because there were some fun ones here. Mo, how would you describe the finish? Slightly salty and bitter. This slight kind of nice freshness. There's a grip to the finish. It makes you want another glass. It makes your taste buds kind of juice up. Again, it's that lack of heaviness which I really enjoy. Then Misha is saying there's a lot. It's Michael. Okay, there we go. I love Spanish wine, especially Rioja. Great. What else have we got here? Has a lighter end to it from Graham. Yeah, it does. After the nose is very rich and chocolatey and black fruits. The palate is a bit more explosive and red fruits, and then the finish is lighter still. It's in a way it's the opposite of the peacock's tail, the coup de taille that we see in some wines, which start very gentle and then expand. This is quite big, but then narrows and focuses and becomes a bit more structured. But I think, thank you, Ed. Yeah, I mean, I think it is good value, and this is exactly the sort of wine that we enjoy discovering, because it takes quite a lot to make it onto our sommelier selection, onto our list. There's no shortage of nice wines out there, but they have to have character and they have to have value, and I think this does. And I'm not sure that everyone will necessarily love it, but I think enough people will really like it, and that makes it worth listing. It's great if every wine on your list everyone thinks is amazing, but I will happily settle for 65 to 75% of people wanting to buy it. I think that's a pretty good maxim. As it's salty, would it be a good one to use in cooking? Do you mean actually like pouring it in? Well, okay. So yes, it would be. Yes, it would be. Cheryl, I take it you don't like it. No, it's. I think that the thing about just a splash. So this for me is a dilemma that I personally wrestle with a lot, because I don't believe in cooking wine per se. I don't believe that you should put anything in your food that you wouldn't drink. That doesn't work for me at all. But that having been said, I do remember being with a very good friend of mine who's a chef, and the lovely Enrica Rocca, who has this great cookery school in Ladbroke Grove in Venice. And in fact, I'm pretty sure, Anna and Jeremy, yeah, they're here. So we met there again a couple of years ago, and I remember when Enrica was cooking, and I was doing the wine thing around the cooking, and I was saying about how you must always drink the wine that you cook with, and she took this lovely bottle of Merceau that I had and started sploshing it in her sauce, and I was sort of grasping it saying, no, don't do that. So there is a balance. But yes, I would have no problem if I'm kind of you know, doing my bolognese and I need a splash of red wine in there, then yeah, I would pop this in quite happily. So yeah, I'd need a magnum though to make sure I had enough to carry on with. So okay, good. So let's have a look. Good. Let's move on to we're now going to do the postscriptum, the Pratts and Simmington postscriptum. That is our next wine. I'm going to put the lid back on this one as yeah. I wanted to fall on my desk. Right. Okay. Wow. Very, very different nose. Very different nose from the Pinzellada. It's actually it's funny because the reason this slightly surprises me is you know, they say that this is aged in large, as in, you know, 400-liter neutral oak, and yet, you know, when I smell this, I get just a touch of that kind of marzipan note that I associate with a little bit of new oak, but clearly not. It's a very inviting nose. It's a softer nose than the Pinzellada. It's more kind of mulberries and plums, less spiky, shall we say. I mean, a really lovely, yeah, smells sweet and fruity. It does, it really does, yeah. Anna, I will tell you all about the grapes. Oh, God, Alfred and Nathan, well on the ball here. Yeah, yeah, the most interesting thing about this wine is the varietal blend and also the blend of personalities behind it. So Pratts and Simmington refers to the Simmington family, who are one of the two most important port producers. You know, they are responsible for Graham's, Dow's, War, Churchill, and a number of other, you know, nice but perhaps not so well-known ports. So, you know, the Simmington family are one of the two most significant, you know, families in Portugal. Sorry, in the Douro for port. And their collaborator since 1999 is Guillaume Prat, who was the former head of Chateau Cos d'Estornel in Bordeaux in Saint-Estèphe, who subsequently left and has moved on to pursue individual projects in Chile, Aquitania, and Wilke in Stellenbosch. But I think his most successful collaboration and subsequent project outside Bordeaux has been this Pratts and Simmington. And I mean, you know, what can I say? It's a really good wine. The reason for the name Postscriptum is this is actually the second wine of the first wine that they made, Chryseia, which I think we're just about to start getting allocations of, which it was the first Douro table red, not port, to appear in the Wine Spectator's top 100. And it achieved an all-time high of third place for the Wine Spectator's top 100 wines of the year. I think it was 2014 or 15 with their vintage. For that, and that was their top wine, the Chryseia. This is the second wine, the Postscriptum, you know, the PS, the Postscriptum, which is the younger vine fruit from the two quintas which provide the fruit, which is Quinta do Roriz and Quinta do Perdiz. And the grapes, back to the grapes, because Anna raised the question, and it's an important one. Touriga Francia, 39%, Touriga Nacional, 58%, Tinto Roriz, 3%. And what do these grapes bring to the blend? So Touriga Nacional, this is the most important grape in the Douro. It's the grape which really gives, it's a small grape, thick skin, gives very dark, rich, powerful fruit, lots of tannins. It gives there was a great quote on the Simmington website, which I thought was like, it gives the stamina, volume, and depth to wines, and that's Touriga Nacional. For many people, if you were to name the great red grapes of the world, you would have Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Syrah, Merlot, and Touriga Nacional. More above sort of Tempranillo, above any other contenders. Touriga Nacional is a serious grape. Blended with it is the Tinta Francese, which is actually the most widely planted grape in the Douro Valley, and it's a bit more subtle. It gives the kind of more fruity aromatics, a bit more kind of floral component to the wine and to the ports as well, from which it's made. And then last but not least, I mean, we're only talking 3%, but it's there, is the Tinto Roriz, which is the Tempranillo as we know it over in Spain. And here in Portugal and here in the Douro, it's quite interesting because it's a bigger grape, a thinner skin, bigger bunches, and therefore it gives slightly more kind of red fruit character, a touch more elegance, a little bit more kind of spicy complexity to the blend. And ultimately, with age, you get this slightly kind of resinous character with the wine. But it's really very, very drinkable, as I think a number of people have commented here. This is £19.50. It will hang on. What have we seen there? It is very drinkable. We have some more of this, and we are thinking of getting in the top wine as well, the Chryseia. I think for the quality of the wine here, for the price point, it's pretty hard to match. I've always said, and I think will remain doing so long as it stays the case, it's very hard in Europe for red wines to match the sheer kind of quality value that you find in Portugal. You've really got something which is, I think, very intrinsically of the Douro Valley, and yet quite internationally styled in that it will appeal to lovers of red wine. There's no new oak here. There's no well-known international varieties, and yet you can put this in front of a group like yourselves, and I think whatever your preferred wine is, most people are going to say, yeah, that's a pretty good wine. That's a pretty good wine. So I think this is another great example of why I need to spend a lot more time on a boat up and down the Douro looking for more of these sort of wines. So yeah. Just looking at a few more comments there. Heather was saying, no, sorry, it wasn't Heather. Someone was saying, oh yeah, sorry, Mo was saying would like more time for it to open up. Totally. I interestingly, 2018, it's a young wine. I would be very interested to kind of, put the bottles I have of this, I won't do this because I'm greedy, but to put the bottles I have or buy some more, it's always a good idea. And, you know, buy a case and just forget about it for 5 years, maybe even 10, you know, because I think this, it has the structure, the inherent structure from those rich chocolatey tannins from the Touriga Nacional. It has the freshness and elegance from the Tinto Roriche. It has the slightly more kind of that nice, almost kind of violet sort of floral aromatics from the Tinto Francese that, you know, you could keep this. You could definitely keep this for sure. Sadly, I've got to finish this glass. So, but perhaps, of course, for those who don't finish the little vials this evening, you know, try it again tomorrow and let us know if it opens up, if it gets better, if it doesn't. I think in the most cases it will. So our penultimate wine, Charlie and I were wrestling about which wine to serve next. I have gone for the PoggioRaso, so the Poggio Argentiera PoggioRaso Cabernet Franc 2017. I could be wrong in going for this one next rather than last. We'll see. You'll tell me. I'm sure you're always very vocal, which is good, which is important. But I've gone for this one, and I have a reason. But anyway, let's do that one next. Okay. Okay, so this one I definitely think giving it a gentle aeration, nothing too violent or vigorous, but you know. Yes, Wendy and David, we are in Tuscany. Obviously, you're getting to know that landscape reasonably well. But no, this is actually slightly further north. This is actually back near up in Chianti. Yeah, whereas this particular wine, the Poggio Argentiera PoggioRaso, this is from the Tuscan coastline, from slightly sort of further south, hedging down towards Grosseto, and from the Maremma region, which is a really exciting part of Italy for wine. You know, as the name suggests, Maremma, there's obviously a connection to the sea, to the mare, and the winery here was an old farm called Adua, and it's only about 3.5 miles from the coast. And the entire character of the wines from this region are fundamentally influenced by the sea, not just, but important, this is important, not just because of the coastal breezes, which keep what is a very, very hot part of Tuscany relatively cool, or at least cool enough to avoid hydric stress, to avoid, you know, the grapes overheating and burning. The winds, those coastal breezes, super important, but also because the soils in the region are quite maritime soils, so they tended to be the heavier clays, more of the kind of the fossil soils that you associate with these kind of bedrocks around here, and it was marshland really until the beginning of the 20th century and probably into the 10s and 20s, and then it was drained and grapes were planted. Merlot does very well down here in these clay-based soils, and Poggio Argentiera is the second project from the Frasacola family, who own Tuarita, slightly further north in Suvereto, just next to Bolgheri. And, you know, Bolgheri, as some of you will know, is the heartland for the Super Tuscan movement. So the non-indigenous grapes are the key there. You know, it's Cabernet Sauvignon, it's Merlot, increasingly there's Syrah and Cabernet Franc. And that's what we're drinking this evening. I have a personal fascination with Cabernet Franc as a grape. Whenever I get an opportunity to try examples of the grape from parts of the world I'm less familiar with, I leap at the chance. Whether it is South America, whether it's North America, whether it is those bits of France you don't normally associate Cabernet Franc with, or of course Italy. So you know, the fact that Cabernet Franc is very good at dealing with warmer temperatures, and obviously as we see climate change affecting so many vineyards around the world, grapes which are later ripeners, grapes which maintain their acidity, grapes which don't get too much acids turning into sugars, keep their acidity high, don't end up wallopingly alcoholic, are really attractive. That having been said, this is well over 14.5%, which is kind of one of the reasons why Charlie and I were debating whether to serve it last. I said, no, we're going to serve it now and finish on the Volare del Camino. You will tell me, I'm sure, if I'm right or wrong. Cheryl's saying very nice and easy to drink. It's good to hear. And yes, and this is my Tuscan backdrop, and hopefully hopefully in a week or so I might even be in front of this vineyard itself. Who knows? You know, presenting live, that would be a great one, to actually be able to pull down the backdrop and show that it is actually there in reality. I can't wait. That'll be a lot of fun, frankly. I'm getting sidetracked. My own fault. Sorry, but you know, I love Tuscany. I love Tuscan wines. I love Cabernet Franc. I love seeing Cabernet Franc doing so well in areas which have traditionally, you know, not necessarily been known for it. This particular wine, PoggioRaso, comes from a specific vineyard area called Bacinello, and Bacinello is slightly further inland and it's higher up, and it's got a much higher density of stony soils, of limestone, of rocky soils. And this is why the Cabernet does very well. This is why, despite this incredible richness and ripeness, you've got this wonderful mineral intensity that runs through the wines. The last time I had a bottle of this, I wrote a big tasting note, and I apologize, I'll just read it out briefly. Deep pastel fruited nose of fig jam, blueberries, plums, and morello cherries, star anise and dark chocolate with graphite, star anise, and soy notes. I mentioned star anise twice, so I obviously wrote the note quite late into the bottle. Explosive attack, molasses, super ripe, juicy black cherries, black currants, blueberries, and currants, bounded by enough saline acidity and some chalky tannins that wrestle and succeed in keeping the exuberance in check. Mouthfeel is mostly lateral, i.e. it just kind of hits you in the side like this, and expansive, with the structural elements holding the finish with a hint of marzipan and blackcurrant. Pure hedonism right now, but with the promise of developing more sophisticated secondary characters. Overnight and a touch cooler, the palate shows more blackberry fruit and tension, is a little more restrained, and the tannins are a little grippier in a good way. I clearly like this wine. Interestingly, after I wrote that tasting note, the wine subsequently received 94 points from James Suckling and 97 points from Luca Moroni in his Annuario Migliori Vini. So that's his guide to the best wines of Italy. So it's become a bit of a superstar. We're very lucky to have a little left. Apparently the next vintage, the price is shooting up, annoyingly, but there we go. But if you like this wine, get it now, basically. It is pretty, yeah, it's pretty punchy. Mm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, and you can feel that alcohol a little bit. But again, this is a wine for me. I would like to pop away, leave it for 5 or 6 years, see the acidity and the alcohol kind of soften and integrate, the fruit develop. I saw someone up there mention licorice. Yeah, definitely. That, I mean, I was banging on about star anise and stuff, and I think, you know, licorice, star anise, very much on that same sort of spectrum. You know, fennel. Um, Good. Well, clearly, and this one is £28.80. So we're sort of, you know, we're crescendoing slowly but surely. From William there, how would you compare Cabernet Franc from different parts of the world? It's a really good question. I first experienced 100% varietal Cabernet Franc, and I think some of us still do, from the Loire Valley, from Chinon, from Bourgogne, Saint Nicolas de Bourgogne, and it can in cooler vintages from more northern European wine regions, it can be quite herbaceous, quite green, can have a slightly you know, herbal ivy tone to the wine that's not necessarily always attractive. It sometimes runs the risk of being accused of meanness. Can be mean, you know. It's not like Merlot, which is generous and bold and open and you know, fun. You know, Cabernet Franc can be a little bit mean and green and lean. That, of course, is becoming less and less of a problem as the planet hots up. Where you see it elsewhere around the world, it tends to have the warmer you get, the more I think it starts to lose some of its varietal character, and it more closely resembles Cabernet Sauvignon, but with slightly more bracing acidity and slightly less rich tannins. I think that somewhere like Tuscany is a great place for Cabernet Franc to flourish, especially in the vintages which are perhaps a touch cooler, like 2018. I mean, their 2018, by the way, I saw earlier today, got 99 points from Luca Moroni. He obviously went bananas when he tried it. God knows what they gave him, but you know, and I can't wait to try this wine from the next vintage, slightly cooler, maybe just a touch fresher, that alcohol a little bit further back. Of course, it does very well in Bordeaux. You know, I mean, our dear friend Jonathan Malthus in Saint-Emilion makes the highest percentage of Cabernet Franc Bordeaux, full stop. You know, that he's Le Dôme, 80% Cabernet Franc. And, you know, you can tell, you really can tell that that works brilliantly. Cheval Blanc, 60% Cabernet Franc by and large. You know, Cabernet Franc is a really interesting grape when you get the right parameters for ripeness. Underripe, it's unexciting. Overripe, I don't think it has quite the same sturdiness that Cabernet Sauvignon has. So, you know, I would say, I'm sorry, this would be a long answer to the question, but sorry, but it just fascinates me. So thank you for asking. It's not so much about where it comes from. It's the ripeness of the fruit when you pick it around the world. You know, it can be great wherever, so long as it's picked at the right time. Right. Okay. Good. So, moving on. Moving on. Wait a minute. I'm just checking. I'm trying to look at a few comments that I might have missed out. Apologies if I've missed anything. That the comments are flying in thick and fast on the chat. So if I've missed anything, then please obviously ask me at the end. I'm just conscious I don't want to keep people too late into the evening. And we do have a phenomenal wine to finish as well. I'm not going to rinse my glass. I'm going to rinse my palate. Okay. Yeah. This wine just makes me smile. In fact, anything from these guys makes me smile. Now there's definitely a couple of people, David and Wendy, Anna and Jeremy. Apologies, as probably more as well. who aren't necessarily on the front bit of my screen, who joined us for this amazing tasting with David Bonomi and Eddie Del Popolo last month. Was it end of July? I think it was, no, must have been end of July. And they joined us live from their, well, I think it was Eddie's living room in Mendoza for a tasting of their PerSe wines. And I don't quite know how we fitted this into the budget tonight, Charlie. So, but we somehow did, which is impressive. So well done. Because, you know, this is something really very special indeed. We are in pretty much the highest vineyards in Argentina. You know, possibly some of the highest. Well, they are amongst the highest vineyards in the world. We're here in Tupungato in the Uco Valley, in the Gualtalari district, right around the monastery that's right at the top of the mountains. I mean, it's as vistas go, it doesn't get more impressive, more stunning, more impactful. You know, very cool climate for South America. Very high altitude. You've got on average, just checking my notes here, 3 to 4 degrees cooler than it is in downtown Mendoza. So this obviously gives you a very different fruit aspect than you might necessarily expect from Argentina. This is 100% Malbec. It's 100% Malbec, but I'd like to think it's probably, hopefully, pretty different from most Malbecs that you might have tried before. You know, having been talking about intensity, not density, for me, this is probably the ultimate example of that in a wine. You know, so often you can try a 14.5% Malbec, and it's all on the front palate, and it just kind of, it's very pleasant, it's very hedonistic, but it's almost like a punch in the face. You know, I mean, not that that's necessarily pleasant unless you're into that sort of thing, but more just the sheer physical assault on your palate is overwhelming. And having hit you, it just sort of it's like a wave crashing on a beach. You know, it just kind of, it just sort of softens and floods and goes. What I find amazing about this wine, even after that huge PoggioRaso, the finish on the Volare del Camino, it just keeps on. It's very persistent. You know, it's got incredible depth, incredible penetration. It's a really, really impressive wine. But again, it doesn't have a trace of heaviness. It's you know, it's wine that you feel in the cheekbones. I just think this is such an impressive wine. It's fascinating because they you know, the production is just crazily small here. They have they have about 4.2 hectares, and each vineyard is 0.2 to 0.5 hectares size. Tiny vineyards right up here in Gualtalari. Incredibly limestone, calcareous, marl rich soils. Very, very stony. You know, we love limestone. Wherever we find limestone, we know we're going to get great wines. And I've got a few quotes here from a few critics, just so it's not just me kind of waxing lyrical. So Tim Atkin, Master Wine, amazing palate, amazing guy. He actually referred to PerSe. He did his classification of Argentinian vineyards, and he put PerSe amongst the sort of 4 first growths of Argentina. And he was very much referring to Argentina now being more about being terroir driven, not winemaker driven. So in fact, you know, finding wines and vineyards in Argentina which can raise the bar, it's not about the winemaking, it has to be about the terroir. You know, it has to be about the quality of the raw material. And then Patrizio Tapio in Decanter just last year said that Monasterio, so, you know, the vineyards very specific to this tiny, tiny sub-region of Tupungato in the Uco Valley, she said so are the first candidate for Grand Cru status in Argentina. So, you know, you've got Tim Atkins saying Premier Cru, Patrizio saying Grand Cru, you know. And then we come on to Luis Gutierrez from The Wine Advocate, who has all sorts of wonderful things to say. You know, some of the most elegant and refined wines from Argentina, best wines produced in the country, groundbreaking. And then he makes the key point, which is that quantities remain so painfully tiny that the wines are practically unattainable. This is the only wine that we've ever sold at Honest Grapes, which comes in cases of 4, because they don't have enough to sell it in cases of 6. So it comes in cases of 4, which is, you know, they make cases that number in the hundreds, in the small number of hundreds, basically. It's just crazy. And, you know, yes, it's got 96 points from The Wine Advocate, 96 points from Decanter. And yes, it's, what is it, 52 pounds. It's not an inexpensive wine, but it is, you know, it is groundbreaking for Argentina. And I think what's very interesting about this vintage we're trying now, which is the 16, yes, it is, just have to check, is it's one of the best vintages in Argentina, particularly in this particular region. And it's one of the best vintages because it was very humid, it was cooler and wetter than a number of previous vintages. And that gives the ability for a longer aging period for the vine, so more hang time, as the Americans might say. So more complexity can develop, more phenolic richness can be achieved. This is in the highest and steepest parts of Guadaltari. These vineyards are 1,500 meters up. You know, so we are at the absolute limits of commercial winemaking. By commercial, I mean, you know, wine which it makes sense to try and sell rather than just drink with your mates. You know, so we are really at the apotheosis, the apex of high altitude winemaking. They use only used oak, no new oak here. It's aged for 60 months. And they made a grand total of 1,100 bottles. So not cases, 1,100 bottles. You know, that's it. So yeah, it's, well, I think it's a really fascinating wine. To have a quick look at your comments, Julia, is there a green note? Yes, there definitely is. There's a real herbaceous, herbal note, which you don't tend to see with most Malbec. That note often gets subsumed by the heavy weight of very ripe, rich mulberry fruit. Brilliant. Wendy is saying that she's drinking the rest of this and has advised David he can't have any more. Very good. Yeah. And thank you. And sorry, BH. Not really into Malbec, more drinkable, love it. Barbara, fantastic. There we go. Good. Got you now. So yeah, this is a Malbec which I think would hopefully appeal to Burgundy drinkers, for example, you know, or at least Burgundy drinkers could understand. At the same time, if you like good Malbec, whilst this is in a very specialist subset of styles of Malbec, you'd still hopefully appreciate, you know, its quality. You know, it's I think it's so it's Graham saying, I've only got 1 box of wine. What happens next? Yes, you're right. We should just carry straight on, shouldn't we? I think you might have misread the rules there, Graham. The next sessions, we spread them out over a fortnightly period. It would be quite nice to launch straight on. and we do have spare sets of most of these packs, so we could do a marathon. That would be quite a fun way to see in the pending apocalypse, I think. After we've done this, we could just do a marathon. I'd like the idea of that. You know, drink along to the Star Wars trilogy or something. Okay, we'll work on that. I'm
on board. I think we're only 2 sets of new regulations away from probably planning that one officially. Yeah, maybe 10 hours.
I think it'd be great. An Honest Grapes birthday marathon. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think I hope that was a whistle stop as ever, but an interesting exploration of the wines which have most excited us in the last 12 months. Certainly I think it's what gives me so much continuing pleasure in doing the job that I do, and I'm sure that Nathan and Luke and Charlie and others of the team who are on the call tonight would agree that one of the great things is that there are always new wines, new winemakers, perhaps new generations of old winemakers, and new vintages to discover. There's always something to discover. So we're learning very much as you are, and that's what keeps the interest alive. I think that the day that we have a wine list which doesn't change, the day that we are completely content with all the wines we have, that there's nothing better, there's no evolution, it's time to call it a day, frankly. But yeah, anyway, so cheers everyone. Very, very nice to see you all. Thank you. As I said, I'm not going anywhere, so any more questions, comments, etc. you have, please, now's the time to fire away, chat or chat or actually chat. For those who need to leave us, totally understand. Hopefully you'll all be coming back for the next session where we start to move up a gear into the very fine wines that we're able to do by the bottle. I think is it Italy coming next? Italian legends. I think we might have that coming up next. That's going to be unbelievable. We've got explorations of Burgundy, of Bordeaux, of largely new world icons. We've got some really, really stunning wines to look forward to. But yeah, as I said, very nice to see you all. And I'm gonna move back and have a glass of the PoggioRaso, I think now. So, God, everyone's still here.
Tom, we're going to scoot off and have dinner now, but thank you so much. We've missed you over the summer, and congratulations again for all your awards. Amazing, and so well deserved.
Anna, that's so kind. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, for those of you who weren't aware, we were delighted recently to pick up a number of gongs from the very prestigious Decanter World Wine Awards, including runner-up to Marks and Spencer for the Green Champion Award. We won Best Subscription Wine Club, which was tremendously encouraging. And most of all, we sort of won the equivalent of the Best Film Award at the Oscars, which was Outstanding Wine Retailer of the Year, which was the judges' universal decision. So we were very, that was very nice indeed. So thank you, Anna. Thank you very much indeed for reminding me about that. Yeah.
See you soon. Bye.
Cheers, Anna. Thanks, Jeremy. Ciao. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Wow. And of course, all the wines are available on Honest Grapes. So if anything particularly tickled your fancy and you think you'd enjoy a measure larger than 100 mils, then I'm delighted to say we have them in the more traditional bottle formats. So don't be shy, because they're
Cheryl, you just asked about the price of the Volare del Camino, the PerSe wine, the last wine. I was going to type it out, but I've just got it there. So they're very unusually in 4-bottle cases, which you don't really see anywhere else, not as far as I know, anywhere else. So it's 200. They're only available in cases at the moment, but they're £214 a case, which my phone calculator very reliably tells me that's £53.50 a bottle.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem.
Thank you.
Tom, can I just say, I'm the BH, the Barbara.
Hello, how are you, Barbara? Good to see you. Hi.
Really just, you've got a number of members on tonight from Clique 100. It's our first session with you and it's been really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyed the wine selection and the way in which you delivered it. So thank you very much, Tom, from us all. And I'm sure that a number of the members will be very keen to get back another session.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening, all of you. Really appreciate it. It's great to meet new people, I have to say. And not that we don't love our existing members, of course, but it's always good to know that there are other people out there interested in what we're doing. And of course, look forward to seeing you at future sessions and keeping in touch for all your various wine needs. So thank you very much indeed, Barbara.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Cheers. Oh, now, Graham, does anyone have an interest in non-alcoholic wine? So actually, Graham, if you're still there, I don't know are you still there or have you given up on an answer? Oh, you are, Graham, yeah. We are, we're genuinely doing a bit of an NA review and looking to list some products, both alternative spirits. We found a great sparkling wine, a great gin alternative, and we're looking at some kind of NA wine, 0.0 wine. So it's a massively growing market, and I think we're honestly keen to sort of offer something which is worth looking at.
Yeah, I have no personal interest in non-alcoholic wine, but my son has a non-alcoholic wine website because he's been trying to get his license, but because of lockdown they can't come and inspect him, so all he can sell is non-alcoholic wine, and it's going quite well. It's quite busy. A lot of people want non-alcoholic wine.
Yeah, no, I think it's a growing market. It's a growing market sector, and one which is being taken more and more seriously, quite understandably, by everyone in the trade and by consumers. It's there's no denying the fact that in lockdown and during quarantine and with the various restrictions imposed, people have been drinking more alcohol, and that's not necessarily always good for us. And people still want the ability to enjoy complex flavors and tastes without a big hit of alcohol. So no, I can completely see why your son's business is gathering momentum, and it's why, as I said, we are really looking at that sector quite carefully, because it will only continue to grow. And it's important that that there are good offerings. As I said, there's a particular wine I was sent earlier in the summer called Naughty, which is it's a 0% alcohol Spanish sparkling Chardonnay. Well, it sounds ghastly, I know, but it's actually quite good, and it's bottled in the UK, and it's far and away the most successful non-alcoholic sparkling wine I've tried. And when you want the sort of the feeling of having a drink, but you don't necessarily want to drink, or you can't for whatever reason, then I think these equivalents are going to become really, really important.
Good.
Yeah. Helen, I've seen your question. If you want to email me about that, just tom@honestgrapes.com. Then I absolutely, I will be very happy to pick that up No problem at all. Melanie, is Melanie still there? Melanie, you're still there. Good. So you just asked about Rioja Criantha. So yeah, if you like kind of that younger, juicier style of Rioja, then you know that can often be a more garnacha based version rather than the sort of Tempranillo, which takes a bit of time to come round. Then in fact, the wines of Pratts, I sort of vaguely mentioned towards the start when the first of the reds with the Pinzellada are worth looking at. And in fact, the sort of the entry level wine from Terra Alta is really, really good. And that's the same grape blend or a similar grape blend that you find in Rioja. So I'd say, yeah, Pratts a good place to look, and Aragon generally. Cool. Just checking any other bits here. Cool. Okay, team. Well, look, I think I might go and have my dinner now. But again, really lovely to see you all this evening. Thanks a lot for joining. I think you've got our details. Hopefully we've got all of yours. Let's keep in touch. We'd love to see you back in 2 weeks' time for our next session. We've also got a great session with Neve Shields, Eat Like a Girl, a good friend of mine, food blogger. We're doing a food and wine sort of pairing, blogging, drinking event, and we'll send you all details of that too. That could be a good one to get behind. So yeah, look forward to the next session. Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Ciao. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.